think it is absolutely unjust to have this Marylander detained one more day in a notorious prison in El Salvador.
Senator Chris Van Hollen. He loves Abrego Garcia. He wants to have the wife-beating gang member back on the streets of Maryland. Lickety-split. He loves Kilmore Abrego Garcia. How many protective orders do there have to be, Senator Van Hollen, before you don't want to bring illegal alien criminal gang members back to the streets of Maryland, where Rachel Morin was raped and killed by an illegal alien gang member? They like more of that, and they'll attack you if you raise an eyebrow. There is a bit of news coming out of the White House. The National Security Advisor for President Trump, Mike Waltz, W-A-L-T-Z, not just W-A-L-Z like the dimwit in Minnesota. Mike Waltz, the National Security Advisor to the Trump administration, is out. He is out. He was involved in that Signal texting chat thread. I don't really use the word chat very often, but it's in the Signal, that app, and they somehow found themselves with the left-wing radical extremist fake journalist Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a Democrat Party activist, woven into their thread on the Signal chat. And now the Trump administration National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and other staffers are out at the National Security Council. Sources confirmed to Fox News. Fox News confirmed Waltz and his deputy, Alex Wong, were purged on Thursday. They love words like purged when it's Republicans. The Democrats don't get that kind of language from the news media, including Fox News. Waltz, who previously served as a Florida congressman and a decorated combat Green Beret Special Forces guy, has come under fire from Democrats and critics. But that's repetitive and redundant and unnecessarily repetitive. Since March, when the Atlantic magazine editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg published a first-hand account of getting added to a Signal group chat with top national security leaders, including Waltz. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and CIA Director John Ratcliffe were also on that text thread while discussing strikes against Yemen terrorists. That would be the Houthis. So that is an interesting development. Waltz took responsibility for the inclusion of a journalist in the group chat in April, telling Fox News' Laura Ingraham, "I take full responsibility." Well, there you go. That's if you're a Democrat, you would never do that. "I built the group. It's embarrassing. We're going to get to the bottom of it." Well, apparently they've gotten to the bottom of it. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Fox News Digital earlier Monday when asked about the reports claiming Waltz and others would be shown the door. She said, "We're not going to respond to reporting from anonymous sources." That's a good quote under the circumstances. So that is a little bit of a big deal. Waltz is not a bad guy. He's a U.S. Army Colonel, Special Forces, Green Beret, decorated combat veteran, member of the House of Representatives. Seemed to be a good choice for National Security Advisor. Perhaps it's entirely due to this mishap, and perhaps not. Difficult to say for sure. But let me get back, and then I want to move on to other topics too. But let's get back, because the Democrats, they love Abrego Garcia, the wife-beating gang member. They really want him walking the streets of Maryland and not in jail in El Salvador, because they're not on the side of civilization. But you may or may not recall, on April 18th, the woman involved in this, Jennifer Vasquez, who filed the multiple protective orders against the hero of the Democrat Party, Abrego Garcia, she appeared on Good Morning America, ABC fake news, because they wanted to ask her, and they have a guy who is a perfectly nice guy, but not a journalist, Michael Strahan. He's a black guy, so they pay him millions of dollars to be a journalist because, it's ABC, Disney, never mind that. But instead of going right for the jugular on the gang member, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, they had the wife on with the multiple restraining orders, Jennifer Vasquez, and Michael Strahan asked her a question, and then she was frozen and didn't know what to say, and then revealed that she's still terrified of Kilmore Abrego Garcia, and then he had no place to go because he doesn't want to vilify or demonize Kilmore Abrego Garcia.
I know this is a sensitive question, but I have to ask it.
Sensitive.
You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021.
Temporary.
Were you in fear of your husband?
What do you think? Why would I get a protective order? Listen to this.
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
That's it. My husband is alive.
Okay. And I'm not going to push on that, apparently.
I'm not going to push on that, apparently. Apparently he's being told in his ear, don't follow up on that. I'm afraid of my husband. And, my husband is still alive. That's all I have to say, which is a clear representation, I think, of her terror that the gang member who has beat her repeatedly, she has secured 2 different, we just learned about the second protective order. Just amazing. And ABC News and Michael Strahan, we're not going to push on that. We're not going to talk about that. We don't want to go any further. And then we got this crazy Democrat Congresswoman, Jasmine Crockett from Texas, who's a Democrat radical extremist. They love terrorists and foreign gangs and open borders and murder and mayhem. Jasmine Crockett, she's out there protecting Kilmore Abrego Garcia and yelling angrily with squinted eyes, being bitter. We really need more illegal alien gang members wandering the streets of America to commit crimes.
As far as I'm concerned, you randomly kidnapping folk and you throwing them out of the country against their civil rights, against their constitutional rights. And frankly, how would they feel if some other country decided that they were going to just start throwing people randomly in our country? Like that is absolutely insane. So yes, all I got to say is y'all need to get these fools out of here.
Now, when she says get these fools out of here, she's talking about President Trump and the Trump administration. At least she's not like Governor Pritzker calling for violence and uncivil war against the United States government. But wait, didn't she say, can you imagine if other countries were just throwing people into our country? Well, hasn't that happened like 21 million times? That other countries are just throwing people in our country?
How would they feel if some other country decided that they were going to just start throwing people randomly in our country?
You mean Americans? Because Abrego Garcia is from El Salvador, and now he's in El Salvador, where they know he's a gang member. They know he's a criminal. They know the tattoos on his knuckles. They know that they are not sending their best. And they have him in prison because they don't want him loose on their streets. That's why he's in prison in El Salvador. And these are members of the United States Congress that are saying these insane things like Jasmine Crockett. How would you feel if some other country decided they were just going to start throwing people randomly into our country? She actually says in our country because she's deliberately inarticulate. That's absolutely insane. Well, they're in favor of illegal immigration by the millions in the United States. They're in favor of gangs from whatever beephole country around the world being in our country. Aren't they amazing? More crime, more mayhem, more murder, more Democrats. That's the rule there. All right, Jasmine Crockett and Chris Van Hollen and all the other Democrats that have gone to Yasmina Ansari, a terrorist, and Maxine Dexter, mentally ill from Oregon. Just amazing. And Jasmine Crockett, the Democrat Party. All right, now let's go to President Trump's cabinet meeting because that was a lot of fun yesterday. And the president had his cabinet there because it was a cabinet meeting. Joe Biden never did this once. What is this, the 4th cabinet meeting for President Trump in 102 days? And the entire cabinet's there. And he invited in the entirety of the press corps. I think it's like this happened in the movie Dave, didn't it? Where the new fake president in the cabinet room invited all the press in to start asking questions. It's the most open, the most transparent administration in modern history, certainly in probably the history of the country. And President Trump with his cabinet invited the press in, having the cabinet meeting, so the American public, live TV, and it went on for hours. And the president held a full-blown press conference, and if the question had to do with the Treasury Department, hey, here's the Treasury Secretary. He can respond. It was a mass press conference that went on for hours. And President Trump, the most open, the most transparent, just amazing. And they're hitting him with questions. Hey, the new Canadian Prime Minister, who's newish, Carney, that the Liberals just took over and that's bad for Canada and the world. But never mind that. President Trump on the Canadian Prime Minister, who was like, oh, yeah, we're not going to become a state or nothing, okay? Huh? President Trump.
President Minister of Canada ran against, not only against the Conservatives, but also against you. Yesterday, yesterday he spoke about American betrayal. Are you interested in rebuilding relations with Canada, and if so, how?
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." He was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. It was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country.
Because these idiotic parliamentary systems, which are inferior to our system of two political parties and elections, and you can't just, the parliamentary system is, I think, ridiculous in myriad ways. And I did mention, since we're talking about Canada, that Michael Piercy went to the hockey game last night with the Montreal Canadiens here in Washington as the visitors, playing the Washington Capitals and Ovi Ovechkin, and the Capitals were winning 3-0, and it was very close to the end of the hockey game, and the Canadiens left an open net, and they were about to be scored upon again for a final score of 4-0, and the fans in Washington, D.C., very unusual. The fans chanting USA. To have beaten the Canadians at their own game. And I tell you, liberals are very upset about this. Oh, no. Oh, it's we're going to give them statehood. We're not going to. We're going to beat them in hockey. The Democrats, aren't they amazing? But kind of fun, the fans in Washington chanting USA while the Montreal Canadiens were on their way to losing to the Washington Capitals and Ovechkin and all that good stuff. President Trump. Yesterday, it is open to the press cabinet meeting with all the cabinet members and all the press to ask anything they wanted for as long as they could stand it. And they're not as energetic as President Trump, but President Trump on his first 100 days.
This week, we're celebrating the most successful first 100 days of any administration in American history since the election. The companies represented in this room have collectively announced more than $2 trillion in new investments, and we have a total of close to $8 trillion all told. And there's never been anything like that in this country. We've never had anything close.
Never had anything close. I've got an update for you because the Ukrainians, they've struck a deal with the United States, sent a minister to come in and sign the deal for these rare earth metals and minerals that the United States needs, that communist China is trying to dominate the planet on every level, but certainly with rare earth minerals as well. And I've got an update for you on that, in addition to more of President Trump's cabinet meeting. You know that the all-new third-generation Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier has finally arrived, and the third generation builds on the incredible success of the previous generations, which earned thousands of five-star reviews on Al Gore's amazing internet. We've got two of them at home ourselves. This new Thunderstorm uses two technologies that studies have shown help to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria and viruses floating in the air that you breathe. They remove dust and pet stuff and smoke and a whole lot more. And you don't have to buy filters and replace them over and over again on a schedule and an expensive schedule, too. The Thunderstorm, you can hold one in your hand. They're only this big. The Thunderstorm will help get rid of any stinky smell in your home or your office. Trash cans, cigarette smoke, smelly socks, left-wing protesters. No match for the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. And right now, you can save $200 American on an Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack for whole home protection. You put one in your basement, your bedroom, your teenager's room, any place you like to breathe clean, fresh air. All you have to do is go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code CHRIS3, CHRIS and the number 3 to save $200 on 3 Thunderstorms. That is EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is CHRIS3. Yes, sir. Yeah, and the rare earth minerals deal. Do we have any rare earth music to play today? Because, people don't pay enough attention to the old band Rare Earth. Have that coming up, too. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris.
You randomly kidnapping folks and you throwing them out of the country against their civil rights, against their constitutional rights.
Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett randomly kidnapping, which is a felony. Depriving them of their civil rights and their constitutional rights. They're illegal alien gang members. Jasmine Crockett should be imprisoned for life in El Salvador. I think it'd be fun. Put her in that thing, shave her head. Give her a good haircut. Isn't that great? Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Scott, calling from the great state of Kansas. Scott, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Well, hey, what's going on, brother?
Not a thing, just the usual madness.
Well, point number one was I was wondering how come you didn't use your incredible influence to get G-Defy's shoes for Michael and Jasmine. But anyway, how do these people get elected? It's like if you have a 10 IQ, your chances are better.
I'm nodding and my eyebrows are raised. And, I think the answer is the failures of public education. Which the Democrats, Democrats are behind.
School.
Yeah, I did too. Just barely.
I mean, these people make me look like Stephen Hawking.
Right.
But the other thing is, I lost my train of thought. Well, I'm sorry, brother.
That's all right. A dumb happens to me all the time. A dumb voter is a Democrat voter. An ignorant voter is a Democrat voter. And maybe that's why apparently no students in the state of Illinois can do math or read at grade level, because the Democrats are growing the next generation of Democrat Party voters. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the son of Robert F. Kennedy Sr., who was, of course, assassinated in California by Sirhan Sirhan. He was a United States senator who was running for president. His brother had been president, shot in the head and killed by a communist. Either that or by the CIA, you decide. But Robert F. Kennedy, a lifelong Democrat and member of the Democrat Kennedy family, is now the Secretary in the Department of Health and Human Services in the Trump administration. And he's a big anti-vaxxer, right? Anti-vax, according to the Democrats. RFK yesterday said $500 million will be spent on universal vaccines. And he's taking the money from one bucket, the bucket that had been set aside for COVID-19 funding. Are we still funding COVID-19? Are we still funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which we were under the Democrats and Anthony Fauci? The influx of cash comes as the nation's health agencies cut grants, to transgender plays in El Salvador. But never mind that. So $500 million now will be spent on a vaccine program by RFK Jr., championed by two scientists, sure, as you might expect, who were recently tapped in senior roles at the National Institutes of Health. The Wall Street Journal is reporting today. But wait, I thought he was anti-vaccine. Why would he be spending $500 million taxpayer dollars on a universal vaccine? Universal vaccines, what are those? Well, they're vaccines that are universal. Don't be silly, of course. Amazing, amazing stuff. Also, RFK, and I gotta tell you, I thought of this when talking to Scott. Scott was asking from Kansas, how do these people get elected? Another day of wondering how these people get elected. The Jasmine Crockett's and the whole gang of them. They're dumb as rocks. And they're senators and members of the House of Representatives. They're governors like Governor Pritzker, who thinks all Republicans should be punched in the face and never have a moment of peace because civil war is his bloated business, the corpulent corpse of a inherited billionaire. But since Scott was asking, where do all these dumb people come from? And I pointed to public education and Democrats, and a dumb voter is a Democrat voter. You don't know anything about math or history or civics or certainly the United States of America, then you likely vote Democrat. If you like crime and firebombing Jews, then you definitely vote Democrat. If you love Hamas and jihad, you're a Democrat. If you love MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, you're a Democrat. You want to free criminals and jihadis on the streets of America, you're definitely a Democrat. You want to steal everybody's money except your own. You want to keep your own, but everybody else's you want to steal. You're a Democrat. But I got to tell you, Scott, there's another one that RFK Jr. was talking about yesterday, and that has to do with fluoride, good for your teeth, in our water supply. And RFK Jr. on that yesterday.
The National Toxicity Program, which was an arm of the NIH, did a meta review of all the science on fluoride and found that there's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children. So the more you get, the stupider you are. And we need smart kids in this country, and we need healthy kids. And thank you for your leadership. We're going to get there.
Fluoride in your water, direct correlation to low intelligence. RFK Jr., fluoride is making kids stupider. The more you get, the stupider you are. The Democrats are angry and they're throwing rocks at him and threatening his life because they know better about fluoride. They're all scientists. Every drunk Democrat, junkie, transgender, mental case living under a bridge is a genius when it comes to matters of science and foreign policy. And RFK Jr. pushing curbs on fluoride says the more you get, the stupider you are. USA Today headline today. And the Democrats are anti-science. They don't know what women are. They don't know how many genders there are. There's a lot about scientists about science they don't understand.
Who are you who are so wise in the ways of science?
Exactly. Kennedy also said he plans to get soda and candy out of the nation's food stamps programs. What, shouldn't we, the taxpayers, be spreading food stamps around so people can buy Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, my favorite, and Coca-Colas? Isn't that amazing? Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. took a fresh swipe at fluoride, saying the chemical used to protect teeth is making Americans stupider, as he touted his plan to scale it back in the country's drinking water. Kennedy praised the state of Utah for becoming the first state to prohibit local governments from adding fluoride to the public drinking water system, and said he was working to change the federal fluoride regulations to change the recommendations. I believe that Florida is also on the precipice, on the brink of getting rid of fluoride in the drinking water as well. Now, I don't know anything about this. I like good teeth. I don't like to have a drill in my mouth. Drilling, that's a bad sound to have inside of your head. Your ears are on either side of that where the drill is going into the bone-like tissue in your teeth. That's not a pleasant thing. But I've had very few fillings in my life, very few fillings, because my mother taught me to brush my teeth. She was a woman from Western civilization. That was great. So he's done now. I don't know, but I know every Democrat that's yelling and pounding the table and screaming curse words. They don't know anything about the medical effects of fluoride being ingested every day.
These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace.
That's right. These Republicans cannot know a moment. What do they need, Michael? What do they need?
The more you get, the stupider you are.
Yeah, that's the more you get. And that's if the Democrats are aware that fluoride makes you stupider, then they would definitely want it in the drinking water system, in the water system, because that would make for more Democrat voters. Yeah, and Governor Pritzker, Democrat, inherited billionaire in the state of Illinois.
Bullies respond to one thing: a punch in the face.
Woo, yeah, woo, punch in the face. That's at Fatty couldn't raise his arm to punch anybody in the face, but never mind that. Isn't that amazing? So fluoride in the water making kids stupider. I have no idea whether that's true or not. And I'm always hesitant to believe a member of the Kennedy family, like everybody. But he's been following. He's not unintelligent. Didn't he go to Harvard? And there are buildings there named after his members of his family. So I think they get in for free. Well, when I say for free, somebody else pays and they go. They don't have to test well or anything like that. They're members of the Kennedy family. Isn't that amazing? RFK Jr., the cabinet meeting yesterday, also jumped in about, all these stories about how the Biden administration misplaced hundreds of thousands of illegal alien children inside the United States. And RFK Jr. Said, listen, under the Biden administration, the U.S. government was a primary driving force behind human trafficking, child trafficking, they're humans too, and child sex trafficking. And he wants to put an end to that, and the Democrats are angry about that, too.
We have ended HHS as the role as the vector, the principal vector in this country for child trafficking. And during the Biden administration, HHS became a collaborator in child trafficking and for sex and for slavery. And we have ended that, and we're very aggressively going out and trying to find these children, the 300,000 children that were lost by the Biden administration.
300,000 children that were lost by the Biden administration. That's a number that's been bandied about, and it's a number that has been contested. But certainly tens of thousands, if not hundreds of them. And they'll admit, it's only hundreds. It's only tens of thousands. Like Terry Moran yesterday, talking to President Trump. We played the audio yesterday. It was night before last on ABC Fake News. President Trump's talking about the illegal aliens coming into the country and murdering people. And Terry Moran, also known as Terry Moran of ABC News, he's like, only two.
We have thousands of murderers that came in. They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, two. Like two, he says. Like two. Illegal. ABC News has been keeping track. I'd ask him to use the names Rachel Morin and Laken Riley. He doesn't know those names because he doesn't follow the news. He's an ignorant Sacagawea. Big time ignorant Sacagawea. But never mind that. And so RFK Jr. is telling you about the U.S. government under a Democrat. He's a lifelong Democrat family. Under Joe Biden being a prime principal vector for child trafficking, including child sex trafficking and slavery, which Democrats like. They are the party of slavery, and they are the party of Jeffrey Epstein. And it's about time those Jeffrey Epstein names, the client list, was released as well, just by the way. And that ought to be happening, and there ought to be more pressure on the Trump administration and the Justice Department and the FBI to release the Jeffrey Epstein list of clients. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, so RFK is worried about fluoride in water. Makes kids stupider. That makes them Democrats. Maybe the Democrats found a way to infect the fluoride supply to make people dumber, knowing that would make for a brilliant future for the Democrat Party. Isn't it amazing? And then HHS under Joe Biden became the principal vector or a principal vector for child sex trafficking and for human trafficking and for slavery and then they spread people by the millions all over the country. And I said that at the time. I said that Joe Biden is the number one human trafficker. Forget about the Mexican cartels trafficking. Joe Biden and the Biden administration became number one with millions and millions. Isn't that amazing? RFK says he wants to put an end to it. Now they're attacking him, saying, they've only lost 25,000 children. And those stories are all over the place today. Not 300,000. Really? Where did the 300,000 go? Because there were many more than that even that were lost in space here in the United States. Just amazing. I am telling you. Also, President Trump pulling together, and it was, let's go to number 27, the Secretary of the Department of Treasury, Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent. He's very intelligent, very well-spoken, and he's the highest-ranking openly gay person in the U.S. government ever because we don't count Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. So got to keep that in mind. But Scott Bessent was on the Sean Hannity program on the Fox News Channel last night talking about the rare earth minerals deal that the Trump administration has cut with Ukraine and Volodymyr Zelensky. And these are elements from the earth that the United States needs to build batteries for cars and cell phones and everything else that the Chinese are trying to dominate worldwide, needed for medical research and all kinds of things. The Russians are invading. Also, this puts Putin and Russia back on their heels because now we have a relationship with Ukraine that is national security oriented with the rare earth elements and the economic relationship. And you're messing with the United States when you're messing with, which has been one of the central points of getting this rare earth minerals deal. It puts Russia on its heels. It puts China on its heels. It creates a relationship between the United States and Ukraine that binds, the relationship that binds. And Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, last night explaining this rare earth minerals deal.
This is President Trump's deal that he's done trade deals, tax deals, and now we've got this Ukrainian-American economic partnership deal, and it's win-win. It is a way to show that there's no daylight between Ukraine and U.S. as President Trump presses to end this horrible war.
Promises to end this horrible war. That is a fact. And that's the goal, is to end the war. And this music is a song called Big Brother. By who? By who? By a band called Rare Earth. Because now we got the rare earth minerals deal with Ukraine, so we had to bring Rare Earth up on the big radio broadcast today. A cool band from the era of cool music, still playing everywhere on Earth. All the music I grew up with is still the most popular music in the United States. On college campuses, college bars, still the best music from my childhood. And Rare Earth had a bunch of cool songs. They really did. They were a cool band. And now Rare Earth is making a comeback thanks to Donald Trump and Ukraine and Russia and China. Yeah, so big rare earth metals deal with Ukraine, very important for economic reasons, for national security reasons, and for geostrategic reasons as well, because Russia wants those rare earth minerals and metals. China wants those rare earth metals and minerals. And the band Rare Earth is an American band, so we get the rare earth minerals. That's for us. And when's the last time anybody played Rare Earth? Come on. We must be the greatest show on earth when it comes to our music, that's for sure. Now, James Carville, you know James Carville. He is a certifiably insane Democrat political strategist. He's the guy who authored the line, you never know what you'll turn up when you drag a $100 bill through a trailer park. That was before Pound Me Too, while Bill Clinton and his team of rascals were destroying all the women that Bill Clinton had sexually abused. That's the Democrat Party of Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein and the whole gang. But James Carville was on with David Hogg. David Hogg, who is apparently getting kicked around over at the DNC, the child prophet of doom, the anti-Bill of Rights, anti-Second Amendment, David Hogg.
I don't understand. You're not going to raise money to run against Democrats, or you are going to raise money to run against them?
We're going to do that. We are raising money.
You're going to do that.
Democrats.
That is an abomination.
James, you have to understand the nuance here.
There's no nuance to it. It's just flat out wrong.
He doesn't listen.
It's flat out wrong to use money that could be used to be
Here's the deal, James. What is your plan?
Hogg says he wants to primary Democrats because they're not crazy left-wing enough. And James Carville, the raging Cajun who's been around for a little while, says, you can't be doing that. Geek.
Here's the deal, James. What is your plan to deal with our abominable approval rating?
Win elections.
Yeah, well, that's what David Hogg is talking about, too. He wants left-wing, radical extremist, bomb-throwing, rifle-toting lunatics to be their candidates. And James Carville wants 80-year-old people to be their candidates because that's your Democrat Party. Man, oh, man. Manischewitz. I am telling you. Once again, the Democrats have overloaded me with more than I could possibly get to. I'm going to have to go to Newsmax and do another hour there. I think that the Jake LaMotta, I call her Jake LaMotta, Sonia Sotomayor on the Supreme Court because she looks so very much like Jake LaMotta very late in his career. Stepping on Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ketanji Brown Jackson jumping in on this religious schools and school choice. Democrats are against choice unless it comes to harvesting the organs of children, that therefore. But Sonia Sotomayor had to jump in on Ketanji Brown Jackson as she babbled and said, just let him finish.
Just as Congress and every state has recognized. So going back to state control.
Can I so drilling down on that, because I think this is
supervision and control.
Sorry?
Just let him finish on supervision and control.
Just let him.
So supervision and control.
Just let him finish on supervision. You're not letting any. You're not listening, Ketanji Brown. You're not even hearing what he's saying. Just let him finish.